This is Joe Brown. You're listening to Buddy in Britain here on 88 and 91 FM, BBC Radio 2. Automobiles are a passion of Buddy, Jerry and Joe, and just before they played Birmingham Town Hall on March the 10th, they visited the BMC factory at Longbridge.
Tomorrow night we play Birmingham. That's where the factories are, where they make sports cars and motorcycles. We'll probably buy some because they're a lot cheaper here than in the States. So don't be surprised if and when they're delivered there.
Here's Jerry and Joe.
The Austin Healey place. We had big plans to order one and...
Yeah, and have our name stamped on the frame, or... That was a fun trip, too.
Yeah, they started taking us through the factory and showed us how they made them. So we just came home and made our own.
The tour entourage travelled in a cream and maroon coach with its back seats taken out to accommodate all the instruments and equipment. These were pre-motorway days, and the venues were not well placed. They crisscrossed the country up and down, but these were young Americans on their first trip to England.
Vi Petty could never understand why we weren't awake looking at all the castles and things. And she'd say, "Wake up, boys, look at this castle." And Vi Petty was such a nice lady. I mean, she had a big handbag full of, cookies and candy, and then she'd try to get us awake on the bus to look at the scenery, which I sort of wish we would have now, but you can't do that if you've been up all night drinking.
It seemed to me like, it was... I remember all the crooked roads and this and that, but I loved it because when I was awake, the scenery was beautiful, and we were always going through a town that I had studied about in school or something like...
Cambridge or...
Yeah, or, some of those little out-of-the-way towns, and it was fun for me. I remember it being really cold, seemed to me like, because it was a wet kind of cold. We'd been basically in a dry... humid-free area, or I had all my life.
Yeah, same here.
And I got over there, and boy, that humidity and, the moisture and the cold weather, I was cold all the time.
Here's Des O'Connor.
You get a bunch of guys together. First of all, you got the American contingent, which was the group itself, Buddy the Crickets, Norman Petty and the gang, and there was a road manager, and then there was a great big whole band of English guys, musicians from the Ronnie Keane Orchestra, and the other acts on the bill. And we always used to pile into this quite large bus, and I would sit down the back there with the boys, and sometimes the Crickets would sit up front and play cards, but Buddy often had an acoustic guitar and just used to strum and play. In fact, he gave me that guitar at the end of the tour, which I've still got. I have to qualify that we bought it. He couldn't obviously play an electric guitar on the bus. So when we went to Shaftesbury Abbey, we went to this music shop, and he tried about 17 of these guitars. I took him to the shop, and I couldn't believe it. Everyone sounded okay to me. And then he picked this one and said, "This is a good one, Des. I like this one." So he bought it, and at the end of the tour, he handed it on to me, So it was just lovely. But it was great fun. We'd play cards, we'd sing songs, and we'd often stop. He was very much a tourist. We used to go to the tea rooms in Harrogate, and we'd stop, and he'd want to do something that was British. He'd write home and say to his mum, "I had tea and crumpets and tea and scones and tea and jam and bread and jam." And all. He loved English things.
Every day it's getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day it's getting faster. Everyone said go ahead and ask her. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day seems a little longer. Every way love's a little stronger. Come what may, do you ever long for true love from me? Every day it's getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey.
Life on the Road in 1958 is also recalled by the vocalist in Ronnie Keane's orchestra, Lynn Adams.
I always sat in the same seat, and so did Buddy. Sometimes he'd sit with me, and we used to chat and giggle, always giggling and carrying on, always. And then sometimes he'd sit behind me and get the guitar out and strum along. He used to do Boney Maroney, And then the other guys would be behind them. He was just a happy guy. I never saw him not happy. It wasn't a moody boy at all, no. Sometimes he got really tired because they were all... I don't think they were very well situated, the gig, so some nights you'd get back early morning, then you have to get back, maybe go back to London and pick up the coach at Baker Street, and off you'd go again. So you're quite tired, really. Sometimes we'd get to a town and we wouldn't have any digs, and we'd have to go looking for them. And I remember one night, I think it was in Newcastle. It's always cold in Newcastle, isn't it? And about 5 or 6 of us didn't have any digs, so we slept on the coach. God, I was freezing. I remember meeting Ronnie Keane the next morning, who had a hotel. He said to me, "You look terrible." Well, I would, wouldn't I? I'd had no sleep. And I booked in a hotel, and I must have slept some of the day. I remember that. But, it was cold.
On March the 14th, before travelling to an evening show at Woolwich, Granada, the Crickets were at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. They were recording a live performance of Maybe Baby for inclusion in the Jack Payne BBC TV show Off the Record. The programme wasn't broadcast until March the 27th, when the Crickets were back in America. And although photographs exist, the film has been missing since March 1960. However, a low-quality audio recording survived, and this is the first time since 1958 that anyone has heard a part of that show.
Well, you are the one that makes me glad, and you are the one that makes me sad. When someday you want me, well, I'll be there waiting and see. Baby, baby, I'll have you. Baby, baby, you'll be too. Baby, baby, I'll have you for me. Baby, baby, I'll have you for me.
The last week of the tour started in Doncaster on March the 17th. A young teenage musician from Mansfield, Bernard Jury, managed to talk his way backstage. He would soon become Shane Fenton and later Alvin Stardust.
Well, the first thing I knew about Buddy was the record I heard, and then the second thing was I wanted to buy the sheet music, because in those days everyone bought sheet music to learn the chords and the words and everything. We didn't think that much about learning it off the record. We used to buy the sheet music, and it was already written out for us. And of course there was a photo on the front, so I knew exactly what he looked like. He was coming to Doncaster, which wasn't that far away. So I literally got on a bus, went over to Doncaster on the night of the gig with no ticket, and I went up to the front of house and spoke to the manager. And I just said, "Excuse me, I'm in a group." So he didn't know whether I was a recording star or anything, I think he presumed I was with a record label. I said, "I've come to see Buddy and the Crickets. And can you show me where to go?" I didn't ask him if I could. I said, "Could you show me where to go?" And he said, "Oh, I'll take you through." So he took me round the back, and they were there. We kind of went in, and I just said, "Hello, hi, Buddy," and I shook hands and everything, and the boys. And I remember him saying to the manager, he said, "Is that okay then?" And Buddy turned to the manager and he said, "Yes, sir, thank you." Sir, he called him. It was like we used to call our teachers sir, And then he said to me, "We don't know you, do you?" So I said, "No," I said, I'm in a group. I said, and it's such a fan, I said, and I just love all the music and everything else. And I just really, just silly, I just wanted to say hello. And we just got talking. And then they were saying, "Gee, can we ask you about this? We're going to the seaside on the tour." He said, we've not seen the English seaside. We've heard so much about it, and where everyone goes paddling and ties handkerchiefs with knots and roll their trousers up, he said, and all these beautiful Victorian piers. And tomorrow night we're at the seaside. We presume it's the seaside because everyone's told us about this pier they have in Wigan. So I said, I think you could be going down the wrong road. I said, "Well, where are you next?" He said, he said, "Well, we're definitely at the seaside the next day because it's Hull." So I said, "Hull." I said, "Yes, it is the seaside." I said, "I don't think it's quite Brighton, And then we just sat around and they were warming up, and he had his strap around his neck while they were talking. He'd been tuning it up. Somebody, it must have been the drummer, obviously, sat there and just on the side of the dressing room table and just started going. And Buddy just went tick, 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 tick. And then he went, "If you knew Peggy Sue," and we all started singing. It was years later that I was just standing around one day and I thought to myself, that was an amazing moment.
If you knew Peggy Sue, then you know why I feel blue without Peggy. My Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, Gally. I love you, Peggy Sue. Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue. Oh, how my heart yearns for you, oh, Peggy. My Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, gal, yes, I love you, Peggy Sue. Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue, pretty, 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 pretty Peggy Sue. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, gal, and I need you, Peggy Sue. I love you, Peggy Sue, with a love so rare and true. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue. Well, I love you, gal, I want you, Peggy Sue. Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue, pretty, 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 pretty Peggy Sue. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, gal, yes, I need you, Peggy Sue. I love you, Peggy Sue, with a love so rare and true. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, gal, and I want you, Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, gal, and I want you, Peggy Sue.
The rock and rollers waiting for Buddy and the Crickets had to listen to a varied mix of music for a pop show. Des included songs like Shine on Harvest Moon. Ronnie Keane's band played In the Mood, and then they introduced their vocalist, Miss Lynn Adams.
Oh, my love, I'm sad without you all through the night. I always remember one night, Marion Keane, she brought me these dresses. She said, you look terrific in these. And it was a very long, skin-tight, sexy dress. And she dressed me and it looked fantastic. But I didn't realise I couldn't walk in it. So when the orchestra started my introduction, they sort of played like 8 bars in. And I was like, I'd hardly come off from the wings. And I remember Ronnie Keane running up with a mic, telling me to start singing. Because I never would have got there. I was like shuffling. All the audience thought it was fabulous. But because I couldn't walk in it, so that was a funny memory, really.
The Tanner sisters sang Ma, He's Making Eyes at Me, and there was a mellow interlude from Gary Miller. He'd had hits with Robin Hood and The Story of My Life. With him on the tour was his fan club secretary, Peter Meadows.
The Story of My Life was just about becoming big at that time. He always used to start with his great Irving Berlin number called You're Nearer. That was his sort of signature tune. And he used to finish up normally with the Soliloquy from Carousel. I must admit, I didn't think it was quite the sort of thing to sing at a Buddy Holly concert, because let's be honest, I suppose most of the fans wanted to see Buddy, and like as today, when the main star's on, the other stars are just there for the support.
You're nearer than my head is to my pillow.
When I first met Buddy Holly, I can't remember where it was, but I can remember what happened was that I just said to Gary, can you take me down to see Buddy? And he said, well, you just go down yourself. He said, you've seen him about and he sort of knows roughly who you are, And I just knocked on the door, come in, and there's Buddy. He always used to write letters, and he was writing letters lots and lots of times. He was writing letters. And Jerry Allison was driving everybody mad because he was sort of practicing on his drums, where the other guy, Joe Mauldin, was trying to get some sleep. And it seemed that that's how it always used to be. Buddy was always writing letters, and he was always playing his drums. And the other guy was always trying to get some sleep. It was wonderful.
On March the 20th, 1958, Buddy Holly and the Crickets played the English City, which just 5 years later would dominate and transform pop music. Liverpool. Their show would have a direct impact on what was to come. Here's Mike Pender.
My sister was into sort of American rock and roll music more than I was at that time. Anyway, they took me along and I'm sitting sort of somewhere towards the back. From that moment on, I was hooked on the Holly thing. But I'll never forget the night. And that was my introduction. And that has been probably the influence for me. I think it was McCartney said one time, had it not been for Holly, there may not have been a Beatles. He would have some part, or he would have touched everyone in Liverpool. Groups, we all did a Holly song. We did one. What did we do at the time? Listen to Me. We recorded it at the Star Club in Hamburg. The sound they got that night, just 3 guys up there. And it was a double bass. But it was electric, the atmosphere in the Philharmonic that night. Everyone was up dancing. It was just, I've never seen anything like it before. That was my introduction to the rock and roll
era, if you like. They just loved him in Liverpool.
Hold me close and tell me how you feel. Tell me love is real. Words of love you whisper soft and true. Darling, I love you. Let me hear you say the words I want to hear. Darling, when you're near. Words of love you whisper soft and true. Darling, I love you.
After the first house at Liverpool, there was a delay which held up the second show. Amongst those waiting was one Jimmy Tarbuck.
It was chucking it with rain and people were just trying to get into doorways or anything, you know, just to stay dry. It was a queue round the block time, though. And we were late getting in because his amplifier had sprung a leak in the first house. And then we got in. He came on. He walked on from the side. There was only 3 of them. And the amp went again. And he just said, I can't work, he said, without electricity. And so there's a delay, and we waited. They were very good-natured, the audience, not a problem. Fixed it, and then he came on. And he played all the riffs that you heard on the record, you know. He just played them all, and they were dressed in the Ivy League style of dress, you know, high 3-button jackets. And he was a tall, gangly guy. Didn't leap about too much, you know, but just played brilliantly and sang great. And they were great behind him, the boys. He played an unusual date in Liverpool. He played the Philharmonic Hall, which, as it says, is like for the classical music or a bit of opera singing, etc. And the first half was a variety bill, a bizarre bill. Gary Miller, the Tanner Sisters. Des O'Connor, who's claimed he's got Buddy's guitar. Well, Des is to guitar playing what Bernard Manning is to ballet dancing.
Strange to think of a young Tarby watching Des O'Connor.
I would do 2 spots, you know, and I was on... obviously just in front of them, and my second spot was just in front of the boys. And he would come and stand in the wings, and he'd watch me, and he'd go, yahoo, every time I get a laugh or something like that. And so I'd turn around and do a couple of quits, but suddenly I found he was there every night watching. And then he would go out on stage, and he'd do a joke, and he'd say, hey, hear that, Des? And he'd do another one. So then when I tagged him one night, I said, well, if you're going to do them, let's get you some decent stuff, not that rubbish you're doing, pulling his leg. And I would suggest a joke or a gag or an idea. And he would go and do it, and then he was getting a little routine together because he had a great sense of fun. Yeah. It was very raw, I was too, but it was raw comedy he didn't know much about. But he knew how to deliver a line. If you give him something funny to say, he could do it.
On Saturday, March the 22nd, from Salisbury, Buddy wrote home about this.
We had 3 good shows today, the last one especially. We're getting where we can carry on pretty good on the stage, what with a few little jokes and all. Everyone comments on how my jokes get bigger laughs than the comedian on the show. Des O'Connor? Who knows? We might change and be comedians instead of rock and roll stars.
The media reaction to Buddy and the Crickets was limited to the music press and a few provincial reviews. In Southampton, the Echo said,
Real Gone Buddy scored a smash hit with fans.
The Sheffield Star called him
a tousle-haired, frenzied rock and roll star.
In Birmingham, the Post said,
Buddy Holly totes his guitar like a sawn-off shotgun with a giant amplifier which made the town hall organ pipes flinch.
But for the man on the Bradford Telegraph and Argus, this was just all too much.
Artistry has been kicked out of the stage door, and audiences search for a momentary gimmick, given the fanatical reception for a screeching guitar player and his two colleagues at the Gaumont last night. I would defy anyone in the audience to tell me what words were issued from the lips of this foot-stamping, knee-falling musician. Where on earth is show business heading?
Yes, mate, we've heard it all before.
Ready, set, go, man, go. I got a gal that I love, so I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready, ready, ready to rock and roll on the flat top, catching out the dungaree doll. I'm headed for the gym to the sock hop ball. Joints are really jumping, the cats are going wild. Music really sends me out digging crazy styles. I'm ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready, ready, ready to rock and roll. Wow! My shoes, roll up my faded jeans, cause my rock and roll baby coming on the scene. Shuffle to the left, a shuffle to the right, gonna rock and roll to the early, early night. I'm ready, 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 I'm ready, 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 I'm ready, 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 I'm ready, ready, ready to rock and roll.
Ready Teddy, one of several Little Richard songs the Crickets performed live in Britain. Others included The Girl Can't Help It and Keep a Knockin'. They also performed Bebop-A-Lula and Great Balls of Fire. But just 26 days after they arrived, it was time for the final show at the Hammersmith Gaumont. But Buddy nearly didn't go on. Here's Jerry Allison.
We were in the dressing room like, I think we're already in our gray tuxedos, and Joe B came in the dressing room smoking a cigar, and Buddy and I were trying to take the cigar away from him, just fooling around, and I got Joe B with the elbow, and Joe B swung around and hit Buddy in the teeth with his head. That's how tall Joe B is. The top of his head, by the way, and knocked one of Buddy's caps off, and this was right before showtime, so Buddy took a piece of chewing gum and chewed it and put it where the cap had been, and we did the show with chewing gum tooth.
Chas McDevitt was also there.
No, he wasn't too happy that night because, with tooth missing and going on stage was a bit unfortunate. My mate, Mark Sharrett, who was the washboard player in my band, he was also a photographer, so he had his camera with him, and we went backstage, hopefully to get a photograph taken with Buddy, but that wasn't to be because they'd had a punch-up, and the cap of Buddy's tooth was knocked out, and he couldn't smile, and Norman Petty was a bit adamant about not letting him have his photograph taken. Whether it was because he couldn't smile or whether he wanted to restrict the number of photographs available, I don't know, but that was the last we ever saw of Buddy in this country.
Tuesday, March the 25th, 1958, Hammersmith, London. The last time a British audience saw Buddy Holly. For a solid month, he and his great pals, Jerry Allison and Joe B. Mauldin, beat a path across this country, wowing fans with a style of rock and roll that we'd never seen before. But Buddy and his music started something that would conquer the world in the decade ahead, and it still continues to influence as we approach a new millennium. I'm Joe Brown, and that was Buddy in Britain. The programme was written and researched by Jeff Barker, with additional research from Jim Carr. The voice of Buddy Holly was played by Craig Urbani, currently starring in the musical Buddy at London Strand Theatre. Special thanks to Cricket's J.I. and Joe B, also John Beecher, Stuart Coleman and John Firminger. The producer was Alan Rowett. Well, fate decreed against Buddy's return, but he never forgot that month in 1958. Here's the final word from Jerry Allison.
Waylon Jennings told me he was on that last tour with Buddy playing bass, and he told me that Buddy had talked to him about he wanted to go back to England and do another tour, and he wanted Joe B and I to go with him, and Waylon sort of said, if Joe B's going to play bass, what am I going to do? Bass, man, you can't play bass, you're going to be a singer. We'll take you as a different act altogether, and Buddy was really anxious to get back to England, and the same deal we had before with Joe B and myself.
Oh, well, the little things you